Hello, this is Freethought Forum, a program by the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists of East Tennessee. I'm Aleta.
And I'm Faithless Forrest, and we want you to know that if you don't believe in God, you're not alone. Right here in East Tennessee, you can find free-thinking atheists and agnostics. This is a show for them and for people committed to a life rooted in science and free of supernatural beliefs.
On today's show, I will be sharing techniques and materials for teaching evolution to younger students.
But first, we want to tell you a little bit about the sponsors of our show. The Atheist Society of Knoxville frequently has a fun meetup at a bar or eatery. Tonight's meetup is at the Barley's Taproom and Pizzeria in the Old City, starting at around 5:30, before the show even ends. Look for the silver-jacketed copy of The God Delusion standing upright on the table. And as Matt Dillahunty at Atheist Experience says, everyone is welcome to our happy hour for food, drink, and conversation, but if you plan to preach, proselytize, provoke, or punch, please don't.
The Rationalists of East Tennessee have several regular monthly meetings. The first and third Sunday mornings of the month are usually lectures with lively roundtable discussions. The second Sunday, we hold the Skeptics Book Club. On the fourth Sunday, we're mixing it up, sometimes with a get-together we call a reflections meeting. It features a potluck lunch in someone's home. Sometimes we meet to play board games or similar activities.
Later in the show, we will give you our websites to visit for additional details, including times and locations. But in the news, it looks like Judge Roy Morrow from Alabama is in the news again. Even though Alabama has joined the ranks of state allowing same-sex marriage, Moore wants less.
Alabama Chief Justice Roy Moore has directed state judges to ignore an explicit order of a federal court. A ruling by federal judge Ginny Junaid required Alabama probate judges to begin issuing same-sex marriage licenses last Monday. In an extraordinary show of defiance, Moore issued his own order, telling the state probate judges to ignore the federal courts.
This is not the first time Moore has violated the separation of church and state. He first gained fame for his display of a plaque of the Ten Commandments. Actually, it's Granite Monument, I believe.
No, first it was a plaque.
Oh, that's right. He had a plaque in his office.
Yes.
All right, in the courthouse.
And later, he erected a 5,000-pound granite statue of the Ten Commandments in the rotunda of the State Judicial Building of Alabama. He was ordered to have the display removed, but refused.
2 days after the deadline for its removal, Moore was removed from office himself.
Unfortunately, he was reelected in 2012.
With his latest shenanigans, he's not only in the violation of church-state separation, but is ignoring the supremacy clause of the national constitution and federal law. When it comes to dealing with a clown of a judge, we say, no more. All right. So, on to our main topic. This evening we have Aleta Ledendecker as our guest, who will be giving us information about teaching evolution to children in our continuing observance of Darwin Day this week. Welcome again to the show, Aleta.
Thank you, Faithless.
So, you have experience teaching children about evolution. Can you tell us more about that?
Certainly. Now, when looking at how to help children understand evolution, change over time, there is a lot of groundwork to be laid that can really start as young as 4 or 5 years of age. We want them to grasp the wonder of life and the awe that comes with catching a glimpse of long stretches of time that have been necessary to allow the life of today to have evolved. This can start with very young children, even before their kindergarten year, but definitely by then. Some educators think that deep time should not be taught until at least middle school, but more realistically not until high school. But by then, children have lost much of their sense of wonder that makes it easy to begin to grasp the nearly incomprehensible amounts of time since the Earth began. So
all right, we need to move on to the cube. Oh, you've got a cube here.
I do, but there's also a slide. And so this is a 1,000 cube. If we laid this out 10 across and 10 deep and 10 high, that would be 1 million little beads. In other words, 1,000 of these 1,000 cubes make 1,000,000.
It's interesting to think about. You know, so 10 of these wide would be a space that's about this
like
big.
that.
So, you know, it would block you from the view of the camera and the viewers, but you know, it makes 1,000,000 seem a lot more graspable.
Yes, it does.
You know, when I was a little kid, we'd use expressions like, you know, 1,000,000 years, or we'd speculate, could you live long enough to count 1,000,000 seconds or count to 1,000,000? And it's quite plausible to imagine not merely seeing 1,000,000 of something like that, but actually, you know, building those cubes.
Actually, yes, they do. They can stack them up. They can lay them out. We don't have 1,000. That would be a lot of these cubes, but they can lay out a grid that shows how much space it would take to fill it up with 1,000,000 beads.
All right. Well, that's really great. You know, as a little kid, yeah, I never saw a visual aid that would help like that.
Yeah.
There's an interesting. When I saw the picture for the slide. You know, my immediate thought is, well, is this all about atoms or something? and immediately came to mind another visual aid that I think is kind of interesting, not relevant to evolution, but let me drag us off ever so slightly. It's by Richard Feynman, one of my favorite lecturers, because he has a nice way of making things easy to understand. And he said, if you were to have an apple in your hand and think about the atoms that are in it and how small they are relative to the overall apple, it works like this. Imagine enlarging every atom in that apple to the size of an apple. The resulting apple would be the Earth that we're on. And therefore, you could imagine looking around, and if the world around us was made up out of things out of apples, you'd have the proportions right.
Right, yeah.
All right, well, great cube, great visual.
And
I wish I was a kid again.
me too sometimes.
So even young children can grasp the concept of 1,000,000. So how does that help with deep time?
Well, yes. Young children and even older ones in the elementary class enjoy another lesson that goes along with understanding the vastness of 1,000,000, stretching out something called a long black ribbon. Now, this ribbon is about 100 feet long, with a tiny 2-centimeter red strip at the very end. Now, the length of the ribbon, yes, little tiny 2 centimeters, the length of the ribbon represents the age of the Earth, with that red part representing the last 1,000,000 years. And that length of time approximates the time humans have been on Earth. So think of it, 1,000 cubic beads stretched out end to end. If we stretch this out in a long string,
one bead after another,
it would be about 15 feet long.
Wow.
And that's 1,000,000. But that ribbon goes, and that 1,000,000 is just the last little tiny bit of that 100 feet of black ribbon. It takes 1,000. So 1,000 of those 15-foot thousands to make 1,000,000.
All righty.
And that would just be that tiny fraction of the age of the Earth. So even if your pre-kindergarten children cannot fully grasp this concept, they can really gain a sense that it is such a very long time, and it's just amazing.
So I can see where that visual aid helps with proportions, because you know, when you're little, the whole concept of numbers almost seems like it's almost like sing-song stuff. Well, the adults say millions and billions and trillions and zillions. But when you see this little mark compared to the whole thing and then say, this is where humans are, wow.
Yeah, and that's 1,000,000 years compared to that long, long black ribbon.
Yeah, wow, goodness. So, all right, so we've got this deep time now. Now, how else does this relate to teaching evolution?
Okay. Well, along with learning about the passage of time, children can and should be learning all about the amazing abundance of life on Earth, and even how it's organized. Having a framework for categorizing life helps children understand the work of scientists and biologists. It also makes it easier for them to remember more of the wealth of information they're acquiring. So here we have a picture of the 5 kingdoms. Children have picture packets for each of those 5 kingdoms, and to help them get an impression of what the differences are.
right, well, I have to interrupt. So I see some illustrations there, but I'll confess I can't be certain what all the 5 kingdoms are. So our children's going to say, well, we got cats and dogs and mice. No.
Children are actually going to say, down at the lower level close to your head, that is going to be the prokaryotes. Yes.
All right.
Or the bacteria. And
prokaryotes.
Then, coming up from that is going to be protists, and then fungi, and we've got plants and animals up there at the top.
All right.
Yeah.
So are you going to talk about the details of these 5 kingdoms?
Well, we do. What we do with the children is we, and this helps them understand the details, we give them picture packets that kind of give an impression of how those 5 kingdoms are different. And then they can match pictures to labels and check how well they do by matching them to the same pictures that are there in the visual. And so they start to recognize the salient features of each of these 5 kingdoms. And in this visual, you see a kindergarten-age student who has traced the pictures of the representative kingdoms and to make her own booklet of them.
All right. So we've talked about these kingdoms.
Yeah, you can go ahead and ask me that question.
How well, I think you've kind of explained what you mean by it and their differences. When I look at that, I would tend to say, how are these related to familiar things? So obviously, we don't see individual bacteria.
No, we don't.
So do you talk to the youngsters about how bacteria do affect their lives and where they do notice bacteria?
We do, of course, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that tonight because we have other things to cover.
All right. So we got these 5 kingdoms. They're part of something, a classification system?
Right, and that classification is called taxonomy. And for simplicity, even though taxonomy is ever-changing and has now moved from 5 kingdoms to 3 domains, it's easy to teach children about these 5 general kingdoms of life. And as they get older, they can understand that taxonomy is not static, but changes as we learn more about living things. Now, children have the most experience with plant and animal kingdoms, so it makes sense to help them learn more about those. There are many, many phyla in the animal kingdom, so our taxonomy goes from domains to kingdoms to phyla and on down, and we'll go to more detail somewhat. But rather than trying to teach them about all the different phyla, it's sufficient to teach some of those phyla to help children grasp the richness and variety of life. Now, one of those phyla is chordates, or animals with backbones.
All righty.
And here's a child organizing pictures and even specimens of 7 classes of the phylum Chordata. So once we get down to phyla, and then we can go down to classes. And at every level of classification, the children can also look at pictures that are representative of that level of classification and try their hand at sorting them out based on similarities and differences. And they become rather adept at doing this by applying critical thinking.
All righty.
They also investigate life cycles with photographic and drawn information, and we have a visual for that.
All right, the life cycles.
So these life cycles also help children gain additional experience with the passage of time. Seen here is a rather short life cycle of a butterfly, which is an invertebrate in the animal kingdom of the phylum Arthropoda.
I think we say Arthropodia.
Okay, Arthropoda. Okay, at every level, the classification is color-coded, with Arthropoda being yellow in this example. Also, each inch on this timeline represents 1 day in the life cycle of a butterfly.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
So we're having the larval stage. Well, the larval stage. The caterpillar stage is how many inches, therefore how many days?
Well, the whole life cycle is 21 days.
Okay.
From egg to maturity of the butterfly.
Okay.
So what you see is a timeline that has the pictures placed on it at the top. That's called the control. And then there are movable pictures that the children can put in the correct positions.
Aha, okay.
For the bottom.
It's interactive.
It is interactive.
Okay, got it, got it. So, all right, we've talked about all these phyla and all these names of organizing the subject. So, where's evolution work in all this?
Now the children have gained all the experience with life and an appreciation of the vast amount of time since the beginning of the earth. They can start to put all this information together in order to visualize evolution, how life has changed over time. They can even start to understand some of the forces that have contributed to those changes. So here's another visual. It's a very long and detailed timeline called the timeline of life. This takes that long black ribbon and expands the end of it, but more than just the last 2 centimeters, which represented the period where humans have been on Earth. This goes back to the very earliest life. Here again, the top strip seen is here with all the pictures is called the control. And it has pictures of organisms and how they change with the eons and eras printed across the top. There are also pictures representing events such as glaciation and extinctions and even geologic upheavals.
Can I ask a question about this? So there are 2 parallel structures here. There's the top one, and that's been filled out. And then the bottom one that I'm unfortunately sitting in front of, that's empty. And so what you've got is, it's like putting together a puzzle. So the kids have the movable pieces, and they're going to look at it, and then maybe make a guess where it belongs and then find it on the control.
Well, actually, when they're first learning, they look at the control and just put the pictures where they belong. So that's part of their learning process. And later on, they don't put the control out and just try to put the pictures and all the labels that go with them.
All right.
You know, based on what their past experience with it, and then they roll the control out to see how close they got.
How they did it. All right, well, that's great.
So, you know, eventually they fill the empty line with pictures without looking, as I said, and just roll it out to see how well they're done. So here we have a picture of children working on this timeline. And in this picture, you can see that most of the labels and pictures have been added to the bottom timeline.
And of course, this is a great big thing. It's not something hung on the wall. Apparently it's all over the floor of your school. So you're not teaching from books. This is very hands-on.
It is. And something else I'd like to add about this is that it's usually a couple of children working together and interacting with each other as they lay these pictures.
So they can negotiate which one they think goes where.
Yes, they do.
I think I remember this was here and someone else thinks it was there.
Right.
Okay.
It takes a long time to do this. But no, we don't use books, although we do have books available if the children are interested in finding out more. These manipulative materials serve as springboards to research.
When I was in 6th grade, I was teamed up with another, well, it would be a young girl because we were in 6th grade, and we worked up a report on the Paleozoic, Mesozoic, Cenozoic, and we talked about the names of the various ages and a few of the characteristic organisms. And
that would be on this very timeline.
And of course, what we were doing is we were working utterly from a book. It was an encyclopedia. The words plagiarism maybe weren't in my vocabulary, but that's what we were doing. We were plagiarizing from an encyclopedia.
Yeah, and children do learn to put things in their own words as they get a little maturity. So now, the next visual is a picture that shows the very end of this timeline. And you might be able to see the Cenozoic era that you just mentioned, labeled at the top of that. It would be...
way up there, way up there.
There you go. You're pretty good at that. And in that picture, there's also, at that end, is an upright human. And there are smaller labels that indicate the Pleistocene and the Holocene epochs. When working with timelines like these, the children learn that for more detail, they go to other timelines that expand the scale at the end of a previous timeline.
Aleta, it would appear we have a call.
All right.
All right. So hello, caller. Thank you for calling Freethought TV. Can we get a name or a nickname, please?
Yes, BJ.
Hello, BJ. Thank you for calling. Can you give us the comment or question, please?
Yes. I'm assuming you don't believe in Jesus because it says at the bottom of the television atheist TV. Is that correct?
I'm sure there are many Jesuses. I've met quite a few myself, but if you mean maybe that one from 2,000 years ago who allegedly came back from the dead, I don't think anyone came back from the dead.
Right. You don't believe in Jesus Christ, right, our Savior. You don't believe in that. Well,
Okay,
why would you get on TV and talk about something you don't believe in? You're not discussing the Easter Bunny, Santa Claus, or the Tooth Fairy. So
Sure.
aren't you just doing this for attention? Like you just want to be seen arguing about something that you don't even believe in? I mean, you're literally bringing up something you don't believe in and wasting everyone's time with it, right? What's your goal here?
Well, okay, BJ, I'm going to answer your question straight on. The answer is we are today talking about evolution, which is, of course, not something that we don't believe in. It's something that we understand as how the real world works around us. So although many of our programs, we talk about aspects of religion that, you know, we perceive as, well, one of the many stories and myths that humans have created. Today's program is about science. Do you understand that?
Oh, I understand what science is, but I'm looking at the television. I guess your production people have a miscommunication with you. It says atheist TV, semicolon, I get, well, two dots, teaching evolution, colon. But don't y'all do this just for attention, though? How can you argue against something you don't believe in?
Oh, absolutely we do it for attention because absolutely we intend not to be...
point?
We intend not to be invisible. There are plenty of people who have said, I didn't know any other atheists. And we are here to make sure that non-believers in East Tennessee know that they are not alone.
Right,
BJ,
well,
did I answer your question?
Not very well.
Really?
It has about the same continuity of
BJ.
faith that the rest of your arguments do. I think it's funny.
BJ, I explained we were making sure that viewers knew they were not alone. Did that not answer your question?
I guess. It's just, I think y'all just want attention is why you do it.
Yes,
we do.
that would be exactly the case. Just like...
So you admit you're a narcissist and you're doing this and harming people?
No, narcissism has to do with sort of a pointless self-love. We are trying to make sure...
like arguing against something you don't believe in. Exactly. You are so on. Why would you argue something that you profess you don't believe in?
BJ, as I explained, today's program...
Is the condescending tone part of your argument? Did you learn to speak to people with a condescending tone like you're doing? What's your name? You're hanging up. Bye.
You can call me Faithless Forest. I believe...
Faithless Forest?
Call me Faithless Forest.
How about attention-seeking douche?
I believe BJ managed to make our point for us.
I think he did.
All right.
Now, what I was saying before was that we took that timeline, the timeline of life kind of expands the end of the timeline, that long black ribbon.
All right.
And now that we've done that, children also know that we can expand every timeline that we work with in this whole process. We go to the next timeline. So it just
Are we here at the correct
out.
one, the Pleistocene here?
We are. So here, yes, we are. And turn your page. Turn your page there.
All right, Pleistocene. So you are working with elementary children here, and you do use the word evolution in school.
And
I'm sure I heard evolution because, as I say, it was in 6th grade when Cindy was her name. Cindy and I put together the program where we talked about the major periods of time.
right.
So we knew the word. It's funny, I don't actually remember when I was introduced to the concept, and it wasn't something that was, shocking to us or anything like that.
No, and some people think that that perhaps we shouldn't teach the evolution of humans, but it's really just expanding the detail at the end of every timeline. So it's certainly possible to do that, and most children are deeply interested. So here is the beginning of the Pleistocene timeline. And it's from about 2 million to 10 to 12,000 years is the Pleistocene. And now we've come into the realm of human evolution. So the blank timeline has printed cards that, when placed in their correct positions, show information about human development, including how humans met their needs over time. At the bottom, there's a thermometer that shows the average temperature of the Earth and how that has changed as well.
I assume that's this line here that's moving up and down?
Right.
Okay. I'm apparently blocking a lot of it.
The higher is warmer periods, and then the lower is periods of glaciation. Now, I just want to tell a little story about this timeline. We were talking about the children interacting. I remember listening to two students as they were putting the cards out. And they were arguing over where those cards should go, and what their argument consisted of was, look at the clothing, or look at the tools. And
okay.
You can see on that one, probably in space number 9, higher.
Number
there
9
you go.
Here. All right.
Is one of the spear points, and
okay.
And these students were arguing, no, this one is more complex, so it has to be later.
All right.
And they went through this back and forth until they got it the way they wanted it to be.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool. Well, we've been signaled for another caller. Are you ready? Go ahead, push the button, greet the caller.
Hello, you're on Freethought Forum TV. Could I ask your name?
Leslie.
Hi, Leslie. And do you have a question or a comment?
No, I just didn't realize that you were local.
Oh yes, we're here in the Knoxville, Tennessee area.
Yep, we've been doing this program for, I think we're in our 4th year now, and we're here every Tuesday from 5 to 6 p.m.
Huh.
How did you find it?
I was interested. I did not realize there was a group like that, and I find it very interesting.
All righty.
Because I also believe that was the same way.
And that's part of our mission here, is to make sure that other non-believers know that they're not alone. How did you find us? Are you just scrolling around the channels and stumbled into us?
Exactly.
Well, that's great to know.
All righty.
Well, thank you so much. You have a good evening.
Well, we certainly want to invite you to some of our activities, and tonight, every Tuesday night, the Atheist Society of Knoxville is getting together for drinks and supper at Barley's Tap Room and Pizzeria in the Old City. So if you can make it out there this evening, you look for the silver-jacketed copy of Richard Dawkins' God Delusion. It's usually in the center of a long table. We average 20 to 30 people. And we discuss everything. Sometimes we discuss, loss of faith. I've never been a believer, so I'm kind of a spectator to that. Sometimes we argue over free will. I think that argument is best dismissed as fast as possible. Sometimes we talk about the merits of using the word atheist, agnostic, and so on. I self-describe as an atheist. How do you self-describe?
Most likely in that stream.
Okay. All right.
Well, thank you so much, and I'll be talking to you soon.
All right.
Bye now.
Thank you, Leslie. Goodbye. All righty. Where am I? Am I supposed to ask a question?
Yes.
So, do you ever have parents complain about teaching evolution?
Well, actually, in my experience, I haven't had parents complain about that. But part of the reason is that it's really important to be open with parents about what their children have
taught.
Or in this case, what they have at their disposal for learning. And I try to follow the interests of each individual child. Now, there have been parents who've put their own personal spin at home on what their children have been learning at school, but I've not had a parent ask that their child be restricted from any learning.
All right. Well, I guess that's good. I've certainly heard stories about parents who are strongly religious, condemning the public schools for teaching evolution and talking about it as being godless and communist, which of course it's actually irrelevant. You know, it's simply the fact of the world in which we live, the universe in which we live. So this time card here.
Well, this is the end of the Pleistocene.
All right.
And the cards where you can see like 28, 29, 30, those cards actually fall under the Holocene epoch. And you might be able to see at the, let me try that.
Yeah, it's a hard thing to do.
There we go. up in this part.
All right, there's a fine gradation up here.
Right, yes.
All right, we got that.
And that's the Holocene, and that's broken down also. But the Holocene is kind of at the end of human evolution, which encompasses modern man. And that is the final timeline that we have in this series, which I think is the next slide.
All right. Whoops. Okay, we got Holocene there.
There we go. And this looks not much different, but this is the Holocene timeline, and it goes into more detail covering that human development in the past 10 to 12,000 years. Now, Holocene means wholly new or most recent. So this timeline will be handling modern humans. It covers developments of art, burial customs, and other cultural factors. And of course, the end of this timeline could also be expanded to introduce civilizations and even the development of technology to the present day.
All right, I can imagine putting writing on there is an important point.
Yes, indeed.
I'll grab the button.
Okay.
Hello, caller. You've reached Freethought TV. Can we get a name or a nickname, please?
Yes, Charles from Central Illinois.
Hello, Charles. Thank you for calling. Allow me to introduce Aleta Ledendecker. I'm not sure if you've met.
Hi, Charles.
We haven't.
Hi, Charles.
Today's subject is teaching kids about evolution.
Indeed.
Now, and as I understand it, I was watching, let's see now, Neil deGrasse Tyson give an interview on some show or other, and he said that the one thing you got to remember about kids, that they are natural scientists, and they love exploring and learning things.
Mm-hmm.
Have you found that to be true yourself?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, I find in my experience that you really don't have to force feed education to children. If you give them a smorgasbord of interesting things to learn, they dive in headfirst. And that the same is true with these timelines that I've been sharing tonight. They're fascinated about things that have happened in the past. They're fascinated with animals. They want to learn as much as they possibly can and get all that information organized. So I think sometimes we just need to take the brakes off and let them have at it so they can learn as much as they can.
So the most opposition you'll get will be from adults who have religious or ideological agendas. Yeah. And so the important thing to remember is to remind the parents, kids love to learn. They find it a blast.
They do. Children do love to learn. In fact, I think our educational system sometimes really dampens that love of learning, and we just need to open it up more so the children can investigate all the different things that interest them, whether it's evolution or whether it's mathematics or geometry. You know, make it interesting, give them things that they can handle and manipulate, and let them just race forward with it.
So, Charles, I was saying to Aleta earlier that in grade school, I was aware of evolution, and in fact put together a program for my classmates where we talked about the major divisions of time. So that was in 6th grade. For me, that would have been probably 1971. What was your exposure to education in your educational experience? Sorry, to evolution in your educational experience?
That was started, I'd say, around about the same time period. a little earlier than yours. I graduated high school in '76. So about 1970 or so, I walked into a science classroom and they had a thing on geological time, where they had taken a long sheet of, I guess, something like butcher's paper, and had wrapped it around the entire classroom up near the ceiling, and put a dot on it. And each dot represented a certain amount of years. And it says, this is what we've been able to learn. You see all those red dots, and all but like 6 of them were red dots. It says, that's all the ones that we know, all the years that we know existed before the first mammals existed. And you see that very last one with that 1/4 of it green? That's the one where the primates and such started. And that was my introduction to geological deep time.
So you also had, in this way, it was somewhat like a timeline that what we've been sharing this evening, but without all the beautiful pictorial details.
No, that it gave us a sense of scale, is what I'm talking about. And the geological books and so forth had all the illustrations and so forth of the time. And they were very, very nice. But giving a kid a sense of a visual scale line or something would be very, very helpful.
It is indeed, because like Forrest mentioned earlier, if you just say, oh, it's so many millions or it's so many billions, those are just words, and they don't have, you can't connect them to anything until you actually see the scale.
Yeah. So one of my favorites was they had a visual representation of a man standing next to a blue whale. To give us a sense of scale on how the largest living animal was to us. And the concepts and the ideas are easy to state as long as you use things like that to help.
So when you say a blue whale and a man, these were like illustrations, right? Or did they did not have a life-size model of a blue whale, I'm assuming.
No, but well, I did go on a field trip to a museum that did have one.
All right.
And that really impressed me.
You know, I've never seen one, so I've not had that experience. But down in Atlanta, Georgia, there is a natural history museum, the name of which escapes me. But they have a dinosaur skeleton reconstruction there, whose size was, I was not prepared for what I saw. And I urge all viewers to take their children there. And I really don't want to say more, because you should go in there and just be amazed.
Yeah, it sounds like something every family should be getting into the act of taking them to these museums and so forth, so because the parents will have a major impact on getting that sense of wonder really kick-started.
So Charles, you're in Illinois, right? And
right.
So for people in your area of the nation, Chicago has a marvelous museum. I seem to remember. What's the name of that?
I don't remember, because I live in central Illinois.
Okay. I'm
way down near the Champaign, where the University of Illinois is. If you remember Hal from 2001, The Space Odyssey?
Yes, that's where Dr. Chandra, I think was Dr. Chandra, yes. I think was his creator, to whom he sang that song. All right.
Yeah.
Well, so I guess our assignment is next time you call in, please try and research that museum there. And I hope to research the name of the museum down in Atlanta, which was so good.
And nice to meet you, Charles.
All right. Charles, let's thank you, and we want to do our mid-program break. And so we'll let you keep viewing and ask other viewers to call in while we do the break.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.
All righty. The break.
So, in case you're just tuning in, this is Freethought Forum, a program by the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists of East Tennessee. Freethought Forum is funded jointly by them and by individual contributions. Shows are live most every Tuesday from 5 to 6 p.m. Eastern on Knoxville Community Access Television Channel 12 or Channel 194, depending on your local cable network. Tell your out-of-town friends to see us streaming online at ctvknox.org.
This is a call-in show, and we are live today, February 10th, 2015. Viewers can call in on the number on our screen. Call in now while we go to the informative break. I guess play the video, Sam.
Are around the Knoxville area and are questioning your religious beliefs or simply believe in one less God than everyone else? Well, you're not alone. The Atheist Society of Knoxville is a fun and friendly group of people just like you that meets twice a week at a bar or restaurant. We meet every Tuesday night following the show at Barley's Tap Room and Pizzeria for happy hour. You'll find our group either inside or on the patio. Look for Richard Dawkins' silver-jacketed book, The God Delusion, standing upright on the table. On Fridays, we meet at Agave Azul or the Beard and Beer Market. But if you plan to preach, proselytize, provoke, or punch, please don't. We all question what we believe at one point in our lives. If this is the time for you, come join us for food, drink, conversation, and fun. Do you find stories of talking snakes laughable? Do you prefer the scientific method over supernatural beliefs? Are you concerned about religious leaders and organizations imposing their values and rules on your body, your family, and the rest of our society? Well, take comfort in the fact that you're not alone. The Rationalists of East Tennessee meets weekly for fellowship and provides a forum for people who support skeptical thinking and rational discussion of these and other issues. To find out more information or to find out about our next meeting, visit us on the web at www.rationalist.org.
The Atheist Society of Knoxville, or ASK, meets 2 times a week. We have evening meetups for fun, food, drink, and conversation. ASK's purpose is to supply a venue for community, camaraderie, and outreach to atheists, agnostics, freethinkers, and other like-minded persons in the East Tennessee area. Our Tuesday meeting is going on now at Barley's Tap Room and Pizzeria in the Knoxville Old City.
The Rationalists of East Tennessee has Sunday activities involving lively presentations and discussions on subjects topical and timeless. Once a month we get together for a book club. The title of the March book is Hope After Faith by Jerry DeWitt. This will be Sunday, March 8th at 2 p.m. at Books A Million on Kingston Pike. The public is invited to participate. You need not have read the book to attend, but of course it helps. Visit rationalists.org to find the rest of the calendar of books and join us at this new location. Once again, Books A Million, 8513 Kingston Pike, every second Sunday of the month at 2 p.m.
Both the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists of East Tennessee help provide a social outlet where you'll find that if you don't believe in Zeus, Zoroaster, or Yahweh, you are not alone.
Well, during the break, we were signaled there's a call waiting. I'll push the button.
Okay.
Caller, you're on Freethought TV. Give us a name or a nickname, please.
Caller is just fine.
Hello, caller. Thank you for calling and speaking to us yet again. Do you have a comment or a question for us?
Yeah, this is a fascinating subject. I got to say that one of your earlier callers, Bobby Joe.
BJ, I believe it was, but I might have it wrong.
So BJ stands for not Bobby Joe?
Apparently not, but keep going.
Okay. Anyway, he inspired this call. I recall listening to Governor Rick Perry, who was talking about what should be taught in school, and he was with a little five-year-old boy, and it was his opinion that creationism and evolution should be taught together so that the little children can decide what they want to believe. And to prove his point, he asked the five-year-old boy who agreed with him. So what I'm asking is when Aleta there has a child come into our classroom and says, well, my friend's daddy said that Jesus made all the animals. How do you respond to that sort of thing? Do you just say that Jesus is wrong, like BJ there would be? And if you did say that, would you be giving him little cards and papers to support that, little exercises to support that point of view?
Well, actually, if children bring in biblical references of that type, I refer them back to their parents, because teaching religion, any facets of religion, is the purview of the parents, not the school. So I do not try to contradict what the parents are teaching their children, and I would not try to take my science class into their churches, nor do I want, as Rick Perry would have done, the religious studies brought into my science classes.
Well, no, that answers my question. I've been thinking about that the whole time that you've been talking. So when you have a question along those lines, you just say, well, we're not talking about that, we're talking about this. We're not talking about the great turtle that vomited out the earth, or any other theories, but we're just talking about this theory.
Right. Well, we don't talk about any creation theories, if you want to call them theories, any creation ideas in a science class. So yes, I would say, well, that's something you would need to talk with your parents about.
Right. So if you were thinking about it, the idea of Rick Perry's, that we're being fair by teaching both of them, is not so much being fair as it is trying to get Jesus into the public schools. Is that what you think their motivation might be?
Well, I think it muddies the idea of teaching religion in science classes. And as I said, I wouldn't go into churches to try to teach science, and I don't think religion should be taught in science classes.
Caller,
okay.
let me address that, caller. I think that there is something that we should say out loud, and that is that the people who want to teach creationism in the science class do so because they're trying to associate their product with a product that actually really delivers on its promise. And there's a phrase that I heard at a Rationalists of East Tennessee lecture many years ago. I can never remember the name of the speaker, but he referred to it as science envy. The religious have science envy, and perhaps rightly so. Science has demonstrably made our lives better. Science has delivered on so many of the promises that religion only aspired to or pretended to. Science cures many diseases. Science extends our lives. Science makes our lives easier. And frankly, they've fallen, well, in fact, a lot of the religious people, they almost are not trying to compete on that subject anymore. They've retreated back into saying, well, it's at least morality. They claim to have a monopoly on morality. And in fact, they demonstrably don't, since, of course, they have contradictory ideas what is morality in the churches that are extant today. Liberal churches will support a woman's right to choose, and conservative churches don't. So, they have no claim to a monopoly. Did I take your point on head on and address it?
Oh, yes, you did. As a matter of fact, my wife was listening to you earlier on the show, and she gave you a compliment that I'd like to pass on.
I bask.
When BJ called in and said, "Are you just trying to get attention here?" My wife was impressed that you said, you didn't back off. You said, yeah, we're trying to get attention.
Of course.
No problem there, buddy. But then I started, my wife was saying, you know, I listened to Pat Robertson. Is he trying to get attention? And when you turn on the AM radio, you cannot get any channel on the AM radio that isn't talking about Jesus. So they're using the entire amplitude modulated band to get attention. So when we have just one little community TV, one little channel once a week trying to get a little attention, hey, I say go for it.
All righty.
Thank you.
Well, great caller. Thank you, and your spouse as well. We're going to wish you farewell. And remind viewers, we have time for another call. All right, there's about 8 minutes left.
Okay.
If you want to call, now is the time to do so, because if you call in too late, we'll just have to pass on it. Aleta, how are we going to finish this up?
Well, I was just going to say that the timelines that we've been looking at have a lot of detail in them, and sometimes it's important to cut through all that detail and show only some of the salient changes. So here's another format, and we have pictures at the top, and I actually brought one of these timelines.
All righty.
So here's one of these timelines with changes just to these hominids.
Hominids, what does that mean?
It means an early human form.
All right.
So I'm going to fold this back up
Okay.
again. And for this, with the long accordion folded pictures, there are then loose pictures that children can shuffle together and then put out and try to get them in the right order, and then check against the control timeline. So here again, it's another way for them to look at those changes in the human development.
These are tools you use to teach about evolution, and more importantly, we often describe it as the modern understanding. It is Darwin's theory of evolution, which is that organisms vary in their characteristics in no particular order or direction, so to speak, but that the environment selects them. That's variation with natural selection. Did you get these materials at like a Darwin Day event, or you generated them yourself?
Well, most of what I've shown this evening came from my training as a teacher, but I have been to Darwin Day teachers' workshops, and they are very informative, but they're mostly targeted to teachers who are working at the middle school or high school level. And I generally taught at the elementary level. But there are some books that we have on a visual that have been given out in previous times.
Oh man, I'm blocking that one.
Why don't we just get close together? And there we go. Now that you see the books. These books were distributed by the National Academy of Sciences, and during the workshops, teachers were also given time to practice with activities that are outlined in these books, and given other resources to help students understand more about evolution, the change in organisms over great lengths of time, and a great many number of organisms, not just human evolution, but I mean, we see evolution in bacteria every day.
Yes, it's happening at a ferocious rate whenever a disease becomes antibiotic resistance. That's evolution happening.
It is.
It's interesting. The book here that I'm sitting in front of is actually one of the books that we did as one of the Skeptics Book Club books for the Rationalists of East Tennessee. It was an interesting read in that so I read it and could compare it to my understanding of evolution, and as I read it, it made me think about the audience it was obviously it intended to address, and what the National Science Foundation thought were the issues that needed to be addressed. Right there in the cover that I'm blocking, it's talking about creationism. So they're taking it right on, or they're facing it directly as a threat to accurate science understanding. And I think that is the important point. When caller, mentioned Rick Perry, who thought that, oh, well, we should be fair and give, creation some time in the classroom. Well, I'm a scientist by education, and I think one of the important things to say is that every time we can rule out some ideas and say, hey, evidence shows us we no longer have to consider this, that's an advance. We never need to be fair to ideas that can be disproven. That's a pointless exercise and a pointless waste of time. We don't need to be fair to the idea that the sun goes around the earth anymore. Now, at times it's interesting to talk about that because we can talk about how humans learned what we learned. And so there's maybe an idea, there could be some validity to talking about why we know creationism is a bad idea. And
to teach as part of the body of knowledge.
And I think that word is called something like epistemology, how we know what we know. I may be mangling that word.
Epistemology.
There we go, epistemology. Yeah.
Well, I want to say something about teaching creationism in schools.
All right.
There is a place for it, but it's not in the science class.
Not in the science class.
It's not in teaching evolution. It is in religious studies. And I think it's very valid to look at not just the Christian religion, but a whole multitude of religions, and look at their creation stories and let children learn, what different people throughout time or different people in different geographic areas of the world have viewed as how they think the world began. And it's very interesting even to compare these.
And you will learn something usually insightful about that culture. The Egyptians, whose civilization was based on a great river, their creation stories have water in them. I think the creation stories of the ancient Maya have corn in them because corn was a central thing to their civilization. We're at the 2-minute mark, and I guess I want to thank Aleta for joining us today and sharing with us what it's like to teach Darwin's theory of evolution.
Well, I've certainly enjoyed it, and I hope our viewers learned something.
And I would like to share a little something about what Darwin said in the very last paragraph or so of The Origin of Species. There is a grandeur to this view of life, with its several powers having been originally breathed into a few forms, or into one, that whilst this planet has gone circling on, according to the fixed laws of gravity, from so simple a beginning, endless forms, most beautiful, most wonderful, have been and are being evolved. There's a great poetry to that.
It's very eloquent.
All right, so the wrap-up of the wrap-up. Please get out your pen and paper. This has been Freethought Forum, a program by the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists of East Tennessee. I am Faithless Forrest.
And I'm Aleta Ledendecker. Please send us feedback. Leave your voicemail at 865-272-9060 or email us at freethoughtforum@yahoo.com.
You can see the show on Tuesdays from 5 to 6 p.m. Eastern Time on this Knoxville station at 2100 Greenwich at ctvknox.org, wherever the internet can be found.
We would like to thank our viewers and send our thanks to Sam and Jonas for technical support, to the staff at CTV Knox, and to all our callers tonight.
Nuns, those who identify with no religion, are the fastest growing religious group in America. Right here in East Tennessee, the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists of East Tennessee let you know that if you don't believe, you're not